Hello, global people. Welcome to episode 31, where too much culture is barely enough. It is two chaps, many cultures. Hello, good morning, Monday, my friend Christopher Höferle.
Good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you are. Did you say episode 31? Is that what it is?
31.
Man, how did that happen?
I don't know. It just kind of snuck by. What is 31 in German, by the way?
31.
Ah.
Very
31 in Australian, and 32 in Polish, if anybody's interested.
31 in Italian, I guess. now that we're showing off. I'm excited. 31 episodes, because when we started this, we were unsure how this will be received and how long we would have steam for this. And then you look at other people's YouTube channels and you recognize, well, there's like 6 videos there. So, hey, 31, that's great. That's a whole lot of thumbnail tiles on a YouTube profile. That's great.
It is made up by some amateur in the background. It used to be, but now we have a team of interns in the global headquarters of Two Chaps, Many Cultures. We're hoping that it's maturing and it's becoming better. I mean, please put your comments in the chat if you don't like it. We're happy to ignore it too. You know, like that.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. And I think what we do need to reiterate all the time is that we're just putting this out there for our own benefit. We're not trying to make money out of you. We're not trying to promote anything. We're trying to offer an opportunity that this is our way of expressing a growth mindset. We're putting information out into the world that hopefully somebody some way down the track or now might find valuable.
Right. And we're also doing it for our own entertainment. So we're bored throughout the day, so we find time in our schedule, so we entertain each other. It's like 2 old men sitting on the front porch with an adult beverage in hand and talking about the good old times. And maybe there's a few youngsters who walk by and stop and say, "Oh, look at this," and watch these old men. Oh, welcome everybody. Two Chaps, Many Cultures. That's us.
I would say I'd be a little bit. I think you're short selling yourself there, dude. I mean, you take on some good activities in your life. I guess we both do. But this past weekend, I heard about a little activity you were doing, which probably wouldn't be suited for certain people of certain ages. But maybe it wasn't suited to you. You don't seem to come across any injuries. So, what were you doing on the weekend, my friend?
Well, you don't see anything below my chest line. It's hurting down there. It's painful. No, it's not. No, we took a little weekend trip up the river with a car and then down the river on the water. It's in the Tennessee mountains, in the foothills of the Appalachian. There's a river called the Ocoee. I should have looked this up before we went online. It's a name that goes back to the name that the original inhabitants of that area gave the waters, the Cherokee Nation, and their language. They shaped a lot of the terminology for geographic spots in that area. So even the name of the state, Tennessee, goes back to Cherokee language. And the Ocoee River is one of those tributaries that eventually will end up in the Tennessee River and then in the Mississippi and then down on the Gulf Coast. And the Ocoee River was home to the 1996 Summer Olympics, which were held in Atlanta, Georgia. But all the whitewater competitions were done up on the Ocoee River across the state line, because let's face it, Atlanta doesn't have much of whitewater river, so they needed to find something nearby, and the Ocoee River was it. And ever since then, I think since the early 90s, that small little river in the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains has been marvelous, excellent for any type of water sports, from kayaking to canoeing to whitewater rafting. And rafting is what we did this past weekend as a family. It was delightful. There's very little that will be more refreshing and entertaining on a hot summer Sunday than having the heat blast down at you from up top, and the refreshing coolness from the mountain water. So yeah, that was amazing.
Absolutely. And I've never done it. You asked me about this. I've never done it. I should have done it. I should know this. But I guess you can look at pictures, and my image that we created for this episode is showing that image of a bunch of crazy people sitting in a boat going down what was perfectly a good, calm river, but for some reason finding a spot where it probably falls over cliffs and rocks and all that kind of stuff. And of course, we got to thinking about a metaphor for when you are in that situation, working with a team. No doubt, I guess, if I can set this up, no doubt before you went and did this, there was some preparatory stage where it was explained to you of what would happen in an emergency, say.
Right. Yes. Yep.
What did that entail?
Well, the usual protocol up on these river tours is that there is one river guide per raft. So that's an experienced leader who has done this trip multiple times, who knows the rapids and the rocks and the currents on this river like the back of their hand. And there's a bunch of amateurs, me included, who get to wear the safety equipment. So you get a life vest, you have a helmet on, and you have a paddle in hand. So there's instructions on what to do and what not to do. And typically people pay attention, some don't. And when they then encounter that one wave that throws them off balance, they find themselves in gushing cold currents, and then what you do is pull them out of the water and make sure that they don't get hurt. So it's fun in games. However, it can be dangerous if you don't do the right thing. So people get injured. People have gotten killed, unfortunately, in these outings because they just nilly-willy ignored all the good advice that they had been receiving an hour earlier. So it is about a strong leadership in the beginning of that task, right? There is somebody who gives instructions and divides up the work and tells them exactly what will be expected of them and what the rest of the team can expect of the leader. And that's how you go about completing that task. It's often used, these rafting trips are often used as team building exercises for corporations, or we've seen a lot of college classes up there. So it's usually young adults and then also corporate groups who do these events. There are some life lessons to be learned from situations like these, because it is to a certain extent it is extreme, and the first time you go down that river, unless you're completely without fear, you're gonna feel some kind of excitement, some level of overstimulation where you think, is this going to be safe? Am I gonna come out of this hole? And what if, right? What if I fall? What if the other person on the raft kicks my teeth out with a paddle? So there's a bunch of what ifs, that the scenarios that could potentially go through your mind. So that's why a lot of leaders or leadership development people use these things like whitewater rafting as a kind of I would call it a breakthrough experience, because people are put into, yes, artificially extreme situations, and then there is a lot of safety nets around it, so they can experiment with what happens if I make a mistake or somebody else makes a mistake, and how do I show up in that scenario? How do I step up and be a leader, or be a good team member who follows instructions, or whatever it may be, right? The situation is different every time. So it's almost like a laboratory for organizational leadership, even though you're not in a lab, you're out in the wild.
Right. And you mentioned that during this trip, of course, the leader themselves fell off the boat, right?
Yes. So, in our case, our rafting guide, who's a dear friend of ours, he fell off the raft, which, in my experience, I've gone down that river maybe 10 or 15 times as a passenger, or as a participant. Not as I'm not a rafting tour guide. I don't have that qualification yet, maybe. But I've been down that river multiple times, and it has happened 2 or 3 times that the leader went overboard. Most of the times when that happens, they choose to go overboard just to add some additional stress to the participants, like, oh my God, our leader is gone, now what? And this time he fell off unintentionally. So he was caught off guard by one of the rapids, and that's how it goes, right? So there was actually, at that moment, 2 people fell off the raft, so it was only 4 of us remaining, and we had to stabilize the boat and get the 2 people that were in the water back in on the raft, and still managed to get ready for the next rapid, which was just, we were approaching it at river water speed, right? So there's multiple variables that you need to take care of, and it was an exercise for everybody on the raft. So what do you do if the leader goes missing, right? So how do you step up? How do you quickly reorganize who does what, who gives commands, and so forth?
Yeah, and do you prepare for that? Well, how much do you prepare for that? I guess there are some, as somebody who's managed businesses myself, I mean, there have been times when I've had personal crisis, or even not a crisis, just things that I've had to attend to outside of the business, and I admit that at some stage I have done little in terms of preparing that. I've always prepared for the staff to be covered, and we've had things to take place of that. But then times where I've just kind of disappeared myself a little bit and gone, okay, I didn't actually put any real plans in place for to look after that, and then of course in some cultures it'd look different as well. And of course this is the beauty of a diverse team. Having a diverse team with different skills and recognizing those skills, and when they need to be called upon at the very last minute or in an emergency, is key to, I guess, maintaining the consistency. If you're in business, you want to maintain consistency not only for internal customers, other departments, but also your external clients as well, so that you've got the ability to show that you've got a united front. And although that you can certainly share the news of the crisis that has taken your leader away, people can step in. And I guess if you've got people in your organization that either volunteer for that, or perhaps there's people in your organization that don't necessarily volunteer for it because it's not culturally comfortable for them, right, but perhaps they might be the best person to do so. So recognizing this is really important too, right?
Yeah, and I think there's at least, what come to mind now is, as I listen to you, there's at least 2 different types of scenarios. One where you have a prep protocol where you know that if leaders go missing or leaders are incapacitated by whatever reason, then there is this protocol in place, and this is succession, so to say, succession planning or emergency planning, contingency planning. And there's other situations where you get caught so off guard because there is no time to prep, or nobody ever thought of that scenario happening. So there's no protocol to follow. And this is what happened on the raft, right? There was no except for the instruction that if someone goes overboard, the rest of the crew gets them back in the waters, back in the raft as quickly as possible. That was all the instruction we got. But that is not a satisfactory or a sufficient instruction for a real-time scenario when stuff happens quickly and you need to be thinking on your feet. So this is where I think, yes, cultural predisposition plays a role, and also what personality type are we dealing with? And this is where everybody needs to act quickly in order to do or to complete the next steps that keep everybody safe and keep the project ongoing, so to say. I think, and I thought about this when we talked about this going into today's episode. Absentee leadership, what does it really mean? How do you define whether a leader is present or absent, right? I've dealt with this so many times in many of my North American, Central European client constellations, where we had a US-based organization or a US-based business, so to say, but it was a subsidiary of a Central European company. So senior leadership was French or German or Dutch or Austrian, and the the main team, the main body of human resource in the organization in the US was North American, either US American or Canadian, maybe some Mexican sprinkled in. And the perception on the North American side was that the German boss was absent, was not as approachable, or was not involved, was not rolling up their sleeves and going on the shop floor. They felt like, well, the boss is aloof because they're in their office, door closed, or they're attending meetings unrelated to what's going on my level of operations. So they felt that their leader was being absent. Maybe they were physically present. However, the team felt not abandoned, however, a little bit neglected by leadership. And in return, the German leader, who thought they were giving clear instructions once or twice maybe, and then went on to do more strategic work, felt that his team was not listening or not taking the instructions as diligently as he was expecting them to. And he felt that once he realized that he needed to be involved more, he felt like he was babysitting a team that he thought should be independent of him. They should be able to complete the task without him. So what considers absenteeism or not, I think, is heavily dependent on which cultural work context you're dealing with. In many cultures in Central Europe, the boss does not get involved with the minutiae. They will do more strategic work. In North America, it's much more common, much more accepted that a leader, no matter what role of leadership they always at least appear to be available to step on the field and do more than coaching, but actually go play as well. And that is often a reason for friction on teams, I've noticed, and moderating that and helping them understand to set common expectations it can be a tedious task if you don't go about it strategically. If you allow, as a team, if you allow that to happen, then chances are your team will fall apart quicker than you realize, and when you realize, it may already be too late. I've seen that more than once. I don't know about you.
That rapid is rapidly coming up, right? That next
exactly.
that next piece of choppy water is just around the bend. You never know quite when it's going to come up. So we would encourage that, if you're a leader in any situation where especially if you've got the opportunity to have a diverse team, is to maybe every now and again do a good check-in with the resources and I'm kind of struggling with just an aside. I was reflecting, this is probably another episode, I'm reflecting on the term human resources. I'm kind of thinking more along the lines of human potential, right? So
thank you.
Why don't we call this human potential, the potential of the people you've got on your team, because teams will change, people will come in and people will leave. So who have you got on your team, and who is going to step up if you as a leader have to step out? And that's the key to today's episode. And we'd love to hear your comments and reflections on that as well.
Yes, we would. And let me also give you another example which may play a little bit into today's topic. One of my clients called me today out of the routine. So we have a weekly coaching session, and which would have been tomorrow. So he texted me today and said, "Hey, are you available? There's something with HR that came up today that I need to discuss." So I'm going to keep it clean. I'm not going to identify who and who. However, this is a company, small, mid-sized operation in the United States, and they're dealing with COVID. And the employee, my client, was COVID positive, and he hasn't tested negative yet conclusively. Yet the company wants him back at the office. So this is not absentee leadership. This is absentee team member, so to say. The team member is trying to keep everybody safe by working from home. This person has not taken sick leave yet. He's been working from home despite the fact that he was COVID positive. Right? He was his symptoms were mild enough for him to continue working. So he did what he could from the home office, and yet the company is expecting him to be back, even though the tests are not 100% conclusive that he's negative yet. So he is in a quagmire, so to say. He doesn't really know how am I going to approach this? Do I challenge my company for being a little bit lax in the interpretation of safety protocols around COVID? Or am I going to accept my leadership's decision that I am safe enough for them to come back? So how do you justify absenteeism, so to say? Does not only affect the leadership, it also affects in these weird times that we go through right now. It also affects how every team member is being viewed. How much do you need to be present to be effective, right? Sometimes leadership, I heard somebody say, leadership is what happens in your absence. So sometimes it's not really necessary to be effective as a leader by being present all the time. Sometimes you can be effective and have your team members do what they need to do without you always being the one pulling the strings or keeping everything under control. I think this is a lesson that I learned again on the river yesterday. Trying to maintain control at all times is a futile attempt, because there will be times when you lose control. No matter how hard you want to hold on to the reins of your horse or the paddle on your raft, sometimes you will lose control. And how you recover from that, how you set up your organization so that when you are missing for whatever reason, how the rest of the team handle the situation. I think this is indicative of a healthy team culture and good leadership. So absenteeism isn't necessarily a bad thing, I guess.
Absolutely. The old adage that you can't control what happens to you, but you can control how you respond to it, how you react.
Exactly.
That's important. Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, I guess if you've got any comments, any stories, any reflections of what you've done in the instance where absenteeism, or either yourself or other people, please put it in the comments, share your stories, and we'd love to hear from them. We'd love to hear your reflections on how you managed it, either successfully or unsuccessfully. That's fine. We're all human. That's what brings us brings this world to a beautiful place. We're all human. We're all part of the global community, but we are unique, and we all have those things happen to us. So that's about it for today. And I guess
thanks, Mike.
No problem at all, mate. Good to see you. Happy week ahead for those. Being this is a Monday, if you're watching the replay and it's a Saturday, doesn't make sense, does it? Really? Again, I keep checking myself.
Even if you're watching it on a Saturday, have a great week ahead of you.
Yeah. We can't. If you're watching this on a Saturday, stop and wait till Monday. We're not doing that. We're not going to do that. You do whatever you want to do. Whenever you watch us, it's fine.
Jesus. All right.
We'll see you tomorrow, I guess.
See you tomorrow. 2 chaps are out.
See you guys.